So I expect to see Finn continue to be a top.
We've seen a lot of really good Finn players across the course of the tournament so far as well. We are into the draft though. The game is underway, or the match is underway, I suppose. Azura versus Exeed. Azura going to be on our A side to start things off. Reza and Anka going to be banned away. Fairly unsurprising. And we'll see. I'm kind of surprised that they banned both Reza and Anka on A side, because they're the kind of picks that you would want to sneak through. However, Samuel and Fortress banned Kensei and Kinetic, both open for a first pick.
So is Finn. And again, we just talked about how much impact Finn has been having. We've seen a lot of teams do these safe first picks, but they are going to go for the Kensei right off the bat. Expect to see it answered with Kinetic.
I really like the Kensei here over Kinetic, because it's essentially like Kensei is good at killing Kinetic.
Yeah.
So you're kind of locking yourself in a counter. You know that they have to lock in Kinetic. There's no way they can't now, because if they don't, you're just going to grab it for yourself.
I mean, we saw it happen last week, where teams didn't pick up one or the other on B side, gave over to both Kensei and Kinetic, and it was just a whitewash. Like, it wasn't even a close game at that point. So definitely you need to make sure you get one of those two heroes or ban one of them away. It's kind of a similar situation to what we saw in 3v3 with some of those power picks coming through, but it is going to be the Churnwalker getting paired with it. And Churnwalker's another one of these heroes that it seems like he's either picked in the first rotation or just ignored completely.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we do have Kuroz stepping in instead of Baby Groot 1. So interesting that one of the Groots is going to be missing from this roster. That does change things up a bit. I'm interested in the Churnwalker pick here. I feel they hovered Arden for a little while, and I wish they'd just locked that in. I feel like Arden is just consistently better right now. And then Flicker on the other side, I don't think either of those captain picks are kind of the best in their role right now. I'm kind of interested behind the logic on locking them in so early in the draft as well.
Yeah, the Flicker pick I think is more just, again, that utility of being able to get the movement speed for the entire team is so important for trying to dive onto someone like Kinetic. And Kensei, with that extra movement speed, especially if he has that invisibility as well, if he's not spotted out, can just cause havoc in an enemy's backline. Obviously, usually in a top-level game, you're going to have the vision down so that the invisibility isn't really as much of a factor from the Flicker ultimate, but a lot of it is still that movement speed is still very valuable. You get the movement speed whether you're invisible or not. So Kensei will definitely benefit from that. The Celeste pick, again, safe mid laner. Everyone is still kind of leaning towards the Celeste as the top mid lane for the moment.
And I think as well, when looking at the opposing composition, there's no real dive right there now. So the Celeste is a fairly safe lock-in in this stage of the draft. Batista really like this composition from Exeed right now is very much just protect Kinetic. No one else is going to do any major damage. I mean, Batista will do a little bit with weapon power once he's got that breaking point, but generally speaking, this is a lot of peel for Kinetic. On the other side, similar story a little bit. There's some peel for Celeste, but realistically, the composition honestly from Azure is a very mixed composition. It doesn't feel like it has one direct purpose.
Really hoping we might get that pedal, but it is going to be the Finn. And again, Finn just very strong right now. It can fit into multiple different roles. But yeah, I agree with you about the identity of these compositions just not really being a clear-cut, defined identity. There's no, you don't look at it and say, this is their win condition. But at the same time, these sorts of compositions can work out really well because you can sort of change and tweak your win condition based on how the game has been going.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see if that's going to work. The issue that I see with this is you've got your two carries have very drastically different styles of play. So Celeste and Kensei. Kensei wants to get onto that backline. Celeste wants to stay back and kite away. You've got Finn who will be able to stick with the Celeste, and you've got Adagio who can kind of help Kensei dive in a little bit, and then Flicker that's kind of the wild card pick in the middle. It's sort of a half and half, and I can see situations in which that would work, but I can also see situations in which that's just too discoordinated and they're just going to kind of fall apart.
I can also see some struggling early on because Flicker or Finn, one of these two is going to have to be in a lane and still manage to find a way to get gold. So that's something that perhaps can be taken advantage of by the side of Exeed, and I think something that they should try and heavily focus on.
Absolutely. We'll have to see if they're going to be able to capitalize on those kind of situations. It's definitely going to be an interesting matchup. Azura, versus Exeed here. Let's bear in mind, just to remind you guys, these are the middle seeds going up against each other. This is as even as it gets in the round of 16. It's about time we jump onto the rise, though. It's game number 1 between Azura and Exeed. It's time to pass it over to X-Scoundrel and Flash X to take it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the VPL, and we're going to kick things off with Team Asura versus Exeed. I am here with Flash, and I haven't actually had a chance to say hi to Flash yet because I joined pretty late. Buddy, how you doing?
X-Scoundrel, I am doing great, my friend. Definitely had the pleasure of casting with Humanist last week. Super excited to be casting with you here this week.
Oh, dude, I am honestly hella excited. What do you make of these two drafts then? We've got a little bit of early action though, so let's just keep an eye on it. It looks like Exeed being aggressive, defending their own CP buff, now making their way into the red side jungle, which is very North American of them, very unlike EU. And already a massive fight going on. Tricky getting pounded on the top hand side, has to pop that flask, goes down to Scarf, and now Baby Groot getting forced away here. This is an absolute madman fight. Trade 2 for 1 so far, but it is Exeed that are coming out on the losing side as the Adagio eventually goes down. Bruto helps pick up the kill there as he goes aggressive onto Ponchik, and you can see Celeste should be able to pick up that final kill. A triple kill for Celeste.
Wow.
A triple kill for Celeste at level 1. That's insane.
7 kills in the first 2 minutes. Europe. I love the early game aggression. Seriously, so much fun. Definitely to be expected. I mean, this is exactly what we saw last week. Asura definitely coming out on top. That's going to be huge for Celeste. Picking up 3 kills this early on into the game. It's going to be really good for her, both her level and her item progression. She's got to be feeling pretty good about that.
So, just talk a little bit about these drafts, because obviously, for me personally, I always think Kensei gives you a really good late game win condition that's always going to activate post 20 minutes. Which of these two drafts are you looking at and saying, hey, I quite like that?
Definitely very much expected meta drafts, nothing out of the ordinary. I probably like Asura's a little bit better just because Kensei is so strong late game, but you have to be careful for that Churnwalker. I think Churnwalker is the standout captain hero right now, and that's going to be something that Asura has to keep an eye on.
While we were talking, Kuroz and Baby Groot in the top lane just managed to put pressure onto the Adagio and get the kill there. He's sitting on just a Stormguard banner and a Dragon's Heart at this point in time. And you do not want to give a Weapon Power Kinetic a start. Just like Kensei, Kinetic, when she's Weapon Power, can scale up incredibly easily. And again, rotating around. Another big fight taking place around that crystal buff, and Team Azura getting forced back. Kuroz going aggressive, forces that flask out of the Celeste already. They want to take this fight right now as Bruto becomes the sacrificial lamb. Oh, wait a second. Tricky pops in. He pops out and he picks up a kill alongside Celeste. But the Scarf going to clean things back up, and they'll get out with just a skin of breath at the end there. Kuroz and Ponchik, super aggressive. I mean, this is the most aggressive I've ever seen Europe be.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw this a lot in the preseason. They had it again last weekend when I was casting, but things are not stopping here.
They're not indeed, and Baby Groot is going to be the one going down. Kuroz doing his best to kite, but early game Kinetic, not exactly the best weapon power carry in the world for her early game power spikes. But Kuroz manages to dash over the wall, backs out towards the mid lane as Celeste picks up yet another kill. 5-1-1. She's already hit the Heavy Prism and Eclipse Prism mini lane spike. It's 4 minutes into the game, almost getting a tier 3 item on board, as it stands. What is going on? This is just insane.
Yeah, sitting at 5-1-1 already. It's going to be super good for her. Gonna be able to see if she can continue to use that aggression and really all this early game gold to her advantage. She's gonna want to come back up to this lane, continue to find a lot of the farm. Tricky though, in this bot lane on this Kensei, if he's just left unattended and he's just farming, that's going to be really good for him as well. And him in that front line diving Scarf and these other squishy backline carries, that's something that Exeed is really going to have to be careful of.
Yeah, I always like Kensei when he's paired with something like an Adagio or an Arden. You've got Kensei paired very nicely with the Finn and the Adagio here. You're going to give him that fortified health and give him the Gift of Fire. Looks like a potential flank coming out though. The Flicker coming to the back line, putting pressure onto Ponchik. Tricky going in. That is going to be a dead dragon. And they're going to clean that up. Dragons on the menu. and a crystal buff finally going the way of Team Azure. They've been trying so desperately. Actually, wait a second. Shy on Churnwalker steals it away. They do have their own, but I do believe that's getting taken by Baby Groot there on the CP Batiste, by the way. Talk to me a bit about the CP Batiste, because we more often than not in 5v5 see weapon power Batiste.
Yeah, we just really haven't even seen a lot of CP Batiste in general. He's one of the heroes that I think struggles actually quite a bit in this meta. There's just so many tanky heroes. I mean, you got the Finn, you got the Flicker. Kensei is super tanky in his own right. It's not something that we've seen very much at all, but I think he's going to be wanting to use those fearsome shades, disrupt these team fights. It's a great addition to this crowd control, pairing it with the trespass from Churnwalker. It could be very effective, but Chris Power Batiste, he's going to have a lot of the splash damage. So with all these tanky melee heroes in the front line, he's going to be wanting to try and splash as much as possible.
Well, that's a great stun onto Jesus there. He does manage to get the stun back, but unfortunately has to give up Finn's life, and that will be a defensive stun nonetheless from Jesus here on the Celeste. He will back out as the CP Batiste has hit that item spike of his Shatterglass. So you really don't want to mess with the CP Batiste with a CP buff and Shatterglass at this point in the game. And again, this is a really back and forth game right now. Sometimes it feels like Asura in the lead, then Exeed make a really aggressive play, get themselves back into it. And now they're looking to dive Jesus underneath this tower. Almost the equivalent of one shot, one shield, one kill coming out there from the Kinetic, and they're going to take down the Celeste. And again, really impressive stuff from both of these teams. A really nice fearsome shade pushing the Adagio back towards Kuroz, but doesn't even really need the help. They pick up another kill and can pressure this turret as well.
Absolutely. Exceed, you know, they struggle a little bit in those early game rotations. They are coming back strong. They have a little bit of a gold lead. They're going to be able to take down this first turret of the game. That's going to allow them to start rotating much more frequently into the jungle of Asura. Jesus going to try and secure his Crystal Treant. Despite picking up so many early game kills, the damage on the back end of that just hasn't shown up for his team. He's been forced to kite and kite and kite, but Exeed doing a great job avoiding it.
Ponchik actually getting taken out in the mid lane. They're also putting pressure onto Shy, but he has got that flask. Oh, has to be careful because those stray Heliogenesis are starting to pick off a couple of his HP bars there. Tricky rotates back up towards this CP buff. Bastion is there in the sidelines waiting to try and be a nuisance as Bruto face checks him. Bastion trying to do his best there. I don't think he's got what it takes to finish Bruto off, but maybe Baby Groot does as he manages to land a single bad mojo. Tricky now going full man mode, and the Gauntlet is not enough to save Arden from that spellfire damage, and this is a bit of a fight coming out now. Baby Groot in the front line, forced to kite back. Another kill goes over to the Celeste, and here goes Tricky on the front line. Those barriers stacking up left, right, and center. A triple kill for Celeste, and suddenly again Jesus is popping off on Celeste in the back line, and it is another swing going in favor of Team Azure.
Yeah, and Jesus is only level 6 right now. If he can hit that level 8, get the extra range on his Heliogenesis, that is when Exeed is going to have to really start being wary of the Celeste. Still just some more damage exchange back and forth. Loic doing what he can on this Scarf. Azura going back in.
That was a nice block on the pull there. Probably one of the easiest abilities in Vainglory to block, but it is one of the most crucial. Scarf trying to counter-engage with that ultimate. They're going to try and take the Finn. Finn is better than nothing at the end of the day, and he will end up going down to the Scarf eventually. Fearsome Shade not quite on the money with the Celeste, but this might have done enough to create pressure on this tier 1 turret. Feels like Exeed are just going to back off, though.
Yeah, Azura feeling pretty confident a couple of minutes ago, starting up that Ghost Swing. I think Exeed did a really great job stopping them from doing that, but Azura looking to get aggressive, invading the jungle just a little bit. Kuroz starting to pick up some of these breaking point stacks on Kinetic though.
Oh, that's the ultimate from Tricky. He pops in. That's a nice Churnwalker ultimate, but not enough to save from the Celeste ultimate as well. Tricky now has found his prey, and Kinetic is the first on the menu. Shy is going to be forced back here as, well, Flicker just doing what he can to force him away. But this is a great weapon power invade here. Tricky's going to pick that up, and speaking of Tricky, he has got 15 CS or so lead over his weapon power counterpart in the form of Kinetic, and is very nearly at that second item of Breaking Point. Then has spare gold to boot, which you can even go for tier 2 boots.
Yeah, just a lot of back and forth. Very kill heavy game, sitting at 26 kills. The goal is neck and neck though. I think that's awesome that these teams are so evenly matched. Things getting a little bit spicy in the river though.
Yeah, that's very, very spicy. That's a great polite company. Kind of forced Exeed away from that situation, and Jesus had managed to pick up his CP buff. Just as you were talking about earlier, that level 8 has now been hit for Celeste. The extended range on the Heliogenesis, the artillery cannon that everybody hates to play against. As a double kill for Flicker somehow in the top lane, and this kinetic is starting to pop off, Flash.
Yeah, Kensei definitely the hero that you do not want to give too much to, or he can definitely start to run away with the game. And now that Celeste has come online, she has 11 kills right now.
Oh my word, Tricky popping off with another one. They're looking for a tower dive in this situation. The Churnwalker ultimate is enough, but not enough to stop the stun from Kensei. It is going to be another kill picked up by 12, 2, and 3 on this Celeste. And suddenly Azure finally taking a considerable lead in this game. The first major gold lead that has opened up, and it's only 2,000 gold.
Okay, wait. Celeste is sitting at almost 4,000 unused gold in her inventory. She picks up the Dragon's Eye. She picks up the Clockwork.
And the Light Shield.
And the Light Shield. Yeah, that's... Yeah, Exeed, you're in trouble, my friends. That's going to be a huge power spike. He's sitting at 12 and 2 right now, and you pick up those 2 huge items off the back of it. That is going to be insane if she's able to just sit in this back line. A great Moon Cloak out of Flicker. We'll see what they can use with it, though.
Going on to Kuroz, he's starting to chunk down super heavy as Flicker picks up the kill. On the meantime, though, Jessis is caught out by Exeed, who rotate round really nicely. Bastion is the target. He's kiting around this turret now, and Tricky jumps over the wall but misses. It doesn't matter, though, because he's Kensei. But unfortunately, he goes straight into the wall of the Arden Gauntlet. But I say that, the barrier's still existing. I thought he was dead. He's going to continue going onto that Churnwalker. The ultimate won't save him. And everybody, that's Kensei.
Yeah, Kensei's enough. It's like absolutely insane. SCFC, please nerf. But those barriers paired with the Serpent's Mask can keep him alive so long. The Pulse Weave providing so much utility to the side of Azura in these team fights. Celeste, even though she got picked off early at the start of that fight, it didn't really matter because Kensei, with those double buffs, going to be doing so much damage. Azura immediately turning their attention onto this Ghost Wing. Will be the first dragon of the game, I think, to be captured, and definitely going to be using this buff to their advantage.
It's been too much action to take a dragon at this point in time.
Exactly.
I thought Kensei was dead. I was ready to give up on that fight, but I think he used his A into the Arden Gauntlet wall, and I thought that's it, Kensei's donezo. But he still survived, still managed to keep that barrier going. The attack speed enough at this point in time. He's now picked up a Slumbering Husk, which is going to make him nigh on impossible to deal with in these fights. This feels like it is Team Azure's game to lose at this point going forward.
Yeah,
still, the whole map is split right now, Flash, as well.
Yeah, they have a nice little gold advantage sitting there. No Soy Un Nomo going into some trouble in the top lane, though.
Yeah, but the Bruto on the Flicker is there to tank things up. That Pulse Weave doing insane damage. He does tank out the ultimate from Kinetic too. And that was a lot of resources expended by Exeed for very little reward. But wait a second, we've got another fight potentially breaking out here. Celeste doing her best, takes a couple of stray hits. A great hook from Finn across the wall, and this is right into Celeste territory. There's the ultimate. There's the pickup of the first kill, and Kuroz is going to be the second. He tried to trade back against Jesus, but the heal from Adagio keeps this Celeste very much alive. It looks like they're not done here yet. The Flicker in that front line, trying to be aggressive. Tricky now as well, ready to jump in if the time calls for it. They pressure them back. Black Claw is the objective that they want to take. Do they have what it takes to do this? And I don't even think Exeed are going to try and contest it. It might be an attempted steal, but that's it.
Yeah, that's going to be looking pretty grim for the side of Exeed. Asura has come online. Kensei Tricky going immediately into the Arden and the Churnwalker.
Yeah, that's going to be the turret forcing her away. But even these tankier targets are starting to feel the wrath of a late-game Kensei. I say late-game Kensei, we're 14 minutes into the game, Flash. It shouldn't really be late-game Kensei.
It feels like late-game Kensei, though. He's got the Serpent's Mask. He's got the Breaking Point. Slumbering Husk so strong right now. He can pretty much get away with doing whatever he wants.
Flicker super aggressive in the front line there. There's the potential engage by Kinetic. Kensei rather tricky on the front line, tanking up those turrets, but he has got so much healing, so many barriers. He might be going down, though. I think it was too much tanked. And Blacklaw may be in a situation where Azure are going to have to back off now. They potentially get this choke point turret, but I don't think they commit much further than that.
That was a phenomenal trespass by Churnwalker, locking down the Kensei, allowing Exeed just enough time to capitalize on the kill.
Oh, the pull and scarf, the no reflex block. It was a little bit late from that situation, and Jessus nearly takes him out with the Heliogenesis on the back line. Unfortunately, they sacrificed Adagio to Baby Groot on this CP Batiste, who has now got that 2-item spike of the Clockwork Shatterglass and is continually pumping out those bad mojos. Bruto here, Jessus as well being targeted. That's an ultimate coming through. I think it's going to hit both of them. It does catch this Celeste on the sidelines, and I think this Celeste is going to lose her life. She gets pulled back in. Groot picks up the kill, and I think Ghostwing just has spawned.
Exceed, the phenomenal Black Claw defense right there, picking up some really good bounty kills, swinging the gold lead back into their favor. They were down almost 3k gold, but from that one quick sequence, they're already back in the lead. They're picking up this Ghostwing buff. Those are going to be huge power spikes, and the game has just completely shifted back into their favor despite being so far behind.
I feel like I've barely given you any time to talk this game because we've had ridiculous amounts of fights and ridiculous amounts of kills.
It has been an absolutely just really madman game, back and forth. So many kills, so many fighting. I love the action. This is exactly what I enjoy out of Vainglory as an esport, though.
Yeah, just mental action all over the place. The Crystal Tree getting invaded here. Tricky on the wrong side of the map. This is dangerous from Azure, but that Flicker with Pulse Weave has single-handedly made Flicker a good hero. Like,
absolutely, it really does.
Single-handedly just made Flicker a decent hero. And Tricky on the backline here, straight into Kinetic. Is this going to be a chance for him to jump in? He's got plenty of space to do so. Lots of stuns going through. Can he sustain up? What an ultimate from Tricky! He blocks out the Churnwalker ultimate as well, and he's going to continue to wail on the backline of Exeed. The barrier still going through. He even trades one with his life at the end there. Celeste very low though. This might be a biting off more than they can chew for Team Azure, and they are going to back. But I mean, I just never thought he was going to die. He was just insanely tanky there.
Yeah, despite going in so far ahead of his team, I didn't like his positioning at the start of that engagement. Again, he is so much utility in the sense that he just regens so much with just the Serpent's Mask and the barrier that's built into his passive. It really is so strong, so effective. He did land that beautiful 3-man ultimate, which was critical for keeping himself alive. Some great damage exchange back and forth. But Azura, they need to tighten up their team's positioning, because if they don't Exceed with this lead that they have now obtained for themselves, that's a huge risk for them, just really throwing if they're not positioned well at the start of these team fights. You need to have the tanky front lines sitting in front of the Celeste so that she's not getting picked up and picked off at the start of these team fights, and she can continue to lay down these heliogenesis, because she's taking so much damage that she is getting forced out of these team fights, and that is not what Azura wants.
I feel like the team composition from Azura is a little bit paradoxical. You want to support the dive of the Kensei, but you want to protect the backline of the Celeste. It's kind of like it wants to do two things and do two things that are very opposite of each other. That is a blocked Finn ultimate. It looks like Azura wants to continue this fight. They jump in onto the Scarf. That is a massive engage. Oh, a great disengage that wasn't properly blocked there. The Adagio ultimate does come out, and because the Crucibles have already been used, it gets the stuns down. There's the Celeste ultimate. Tricky looking for his opening past this Arden Gauntlet, but is not going to get there. Bruto again, that tanky flicker on the front line. The fountain will be enough to back them out. Wait a second, Tricky's not done yet. I think there's a lot of damage going down onto him though. He's bitten off more than he can chew in this situation. And again, because Tricky went over aggressive, unfortunately, they pay the price. And that is going to be a double kill. Wait a second, how did Celeste pick up a kill there? Tricky going back in onto Ponchik. That's the barrier starting to come through. He is going to respect the CP Batiste though, and Bruto and Tricky, I think, have done all they can. That was a 4 for 3. What looked like a sure thing for Azura ended up being a pretty good trade by... oh, what a great ultimate, by the way. And now Tricky has to be careful. The block comes through. I think Bruto could be done for. Oh, it's close. It's close. Yeah, Bruto's done for.
Yeah. Again, that's exactly what I was just saying Azura needed to do. They grouped up. They had a great start of that engagement. They were really grouped well together. I mean, I know that that's not necessarily something you want to do against the Batiste, but I think that it actually served them very, very well. It enabled Celeste to just stay in there and continue to apply her damage. Exceed, though, did a phenomenal job turning that back around. I am really impressed by how much damage Batiste is doing. That's not typically a hero that we see super effective at this competitive level. But the fearsome shade just forcing enemies away in these team fights if Azura doesn't find the blocks at the right time, that could make or break the difference for these engagements.
I quite like it for the simple fact that you'll never beat Kensei in a sustained damage war. Kensei is the ultimate sustained damage hero in the game, but you put in CP Batiste, who is going to have a huge burst damage on a melee front line like Tricky. Or this isn't engaged though. He's looking for it. He's trying to get onto the back line. He managed to get through the Garden Gauntlet, which actually cancelled out a brilliant Fearsome Shade, again doing its job versus this Kensei, who is once more slowly chunking his way forward. The kinetic on the back line does go down, but not before he trades 1-for-1 with the Celeste. And now Tricky just trying to stack up on this Batiste in that front line. Another great stun, and now I think he's found his opportunity. Ponchik can do no more than channel his ultimate, and it's up to Tricky at this point in time to try and carry this fight. It's Tricky versus the world. He takes out the Scarf. No one can stop him at this point in time. It's just an Arden and a Churnwalker. He can't overextend though. Don't underestimate the damage coming out from the Vein Crystal, Tricky. He ultimates in. That's a little bit overextended. He doesn't get the kill, and I think he's found his time to back out of this situation, Flash.
Yeah, his breaking point stacks have worn off. He knows that he can't go back in and trade. He needs to try and disengage, but those pulls, the trespass, Exceed again. It looks like they're losing at the start of the team fight. It was a phenomenal trade by Kuroz to be able to take down the Celeste at the same time. That was actually a 1 versus 2 engagement. Bruto is actually doing what he could to try and keep Jesus alive on that Celeste. But yeah, phenomenal trade by Kuroz. And then for Exeed to be able to come back, really turn things around in that fight, they're immediately going to turn their attention on to this Ghost Wing. And the buff is going to be something that at this stage in the game, Azura might not want to contest.
No Celeste ultimate for the attempted steal, and that is going to be Exeed taking the Ghost Wing. Let me pose this question to you, Flash. If you're Bruto, it looks like a lot of the time you're split from Tricky. Do you think the better option for Azura is say, okay, well, Bruto and Tricky as a unit, like they can dive, the pulse wave damage is pretty high coming out from Bruto. They dive onto someone in the back line like Kuroz or Ponchik, and then you leave the Adagio and the Finn to try and body block and protect the Celeste?
I agree 100%. I think that something that Azura really needs to do is they need to be a little bit more coordinated with who they want to engage onto. That last fight, it was the Celeste and the Flicker going onto the Kinetic, but I think their main target needs to be the Scarf.
This is a massive engage. Kuroz caught off on the side lane. It is Tricky and the Flicker going toe-to-toe right now, but it's not enough to actually get the kill, and suddenly they pick up the kill onto Adagio. Tricky on the back line, though, and he has got blinking health bars to take down left, right, and center, and that is going to be Kensei doing what Kensei does best, comboing with that Celeste, and I think we've found our winner. Unfortunately, it's not Exeed.
It is not Exeed. Exeed put up one hell of a fight, though. 67 kills in a Vainglory game. Where did 67 kills come in 23 minutes? That's like quick math. It's like 3 kills a minute, pretty close. Yeah, that was action-packed. I don't even know what happened in that last team fight. Exeed lost it. They all got blown up. But yeah, huge kudos to Azura keeping their composure despite throwing away a little bit of an early lead, coming back at the end. Definitely going to be a very exciting game too.
I think the problem was you never take something like a Black Claw against a Celeste, like especially when no one's dead and you've got a complete man and equal advantage across the board. Taking a Black Claw against a Celeste is asking to get sieged, you know, when you're doing that, and they took so much damage from those Heliogenesis. Well, that was the game 1 here between Azure and Exeed. Azure take the 1-game lead in this series. We're going to hand it back over to the desk to see what they have to say.
I cannot believe what a bloodbath we just witnessed right there. The crazy thing to me is that 67 kills fit into a 23-minute game.
Right? Like, it was absolutely insane how frequently these teams were fighting.
Yeah.
And it was both of them kind of employing similar strategies of just trying to group up and look for objectives. But then the opposing team would just group up and try and defend that objective, and it ended up resulting in so many of these fights with like just one person left standing at the end of the fight, so that they can't push. And so then you just get another reset of the same fight happening over and over again.
Yeah, I feel like looking at the scoreboard, it's really easy to praise Jesus on that victory because he was on the Celeste. He was sweeping up the kills. But honestly, Tricky was the standout player to me in that game because his knowledge of how far in you can go on Kensei and get out with your life was incredibly impressive. The ability to jump in those fights, use your cooldowns, burst someone, and then get out, reset again, and go in for another strike.
And not only that, but just the target selection by pretty much everyone, really, not just Tricky, but knowing that, okay, we need to try and get these carries taken down. You saw so many times the first people dead were like the Kinetic and the Celeste, right off the bat, or if Celeste survived, then oftentimes tricky. It was tricky. But pretty much both teams were picking one of those carries and saying one of them needs to die right off the bat, or we lose this fight.
And maybe that's the wrong man. Maybe one of the teams needed to be protecting their carries instead. Let's take a look at where we are in the bracket, though. We're in Group B in our Razor Phone bracket right now. It's Team Azure versus Exeed, and you can see the winner of this series is going to be going up against the winner of the next series here today, which will be Queso and Fern Skullblacker. Pretty likely Queso, but so far, actually, Azure and Exeed have been putting on a good show. Like, I expect that whoever does go up against their next opponent will be in with a decent chance of actually showing up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why this was one of the matches I was looking forward to the most of the entire tournament. So, and these teams are kind of showing why this was one of the most hyped up matches. If you take a look at the power rankings, this is each of us having our own thoughts on this.
I can actually justify my decisions now. I'm actually on the desk to talk this through. So, I mean, Queso at the top, Clash second. I think those are both fairly reasonable. You've gone for Exeed over Sly here. Talk to me about that, because I feel like Sly is the safe, like, X-Rising Lotus, third seed. I think that's a pretty reasonable third pick.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a reasonable third pick. I wanted to kind of go outside the box a little bit. Looking at these teams on paper, it was just, there was so much experience on this team, and I was really looking forward to seeing them, bring that experience to the table. And I felt like they had just that little bit of an edge that could get them over the hump. Obviously, we hadn't seen these teams compete yet.
I mean,
so it was,
to be fair, I was getting ready to rib you during that game because they were starting to fall pretty far behind. But the comeback they made, they did still lose the game, but they did it. Like, I'm impressed by Exeed on that first game. But I definitely think Sly, with the leadership of Keanu and Nakoa, I think the experience on that roster and just the names on that roster instantly makes them a favorite for top 3, and maybe could even do better than third.
I mean, we saw it in the preseason where it was Queso Clash 1 and 2, but then after that it was just kind of up in the air, and I think it's still the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are just getting ready to go into the draft. We're just waiting on one of the players, though, so we'll be with you guys very shortly on that one. But I want to talk a little bit more about this matchup once again, and I want to talk about Caroz. Now, Caroz was the guy subbing in. Bear in mind, Baby Groot did not play this game. Baby Groot Part 2 did, but obviously his main counterpart wasn't on the roster for today. I'm not 100% sure why, but Caroz stepped in. Now, Caroz, I think, in this game was kind of hit or miss because he had some glorious moments on his kinetic, but he also had some pretty interesting positioning in some of those late game team fights. He was isolating himself from his team, which, as a weapon power carry with no defensive capabilities, you can't afford to do that. And honestly, that last team fight, I feel like it was kind of on Caroz's shoulders.
Yeah, a little bit of it. I mean, there was a fight earlier where it was a similar situation where Caroz kind of was caught out on their own, but was able to trade the Celeste. In that last team fight, there wasn't that trade opportunity available, so definitely positioning something that could be improved for sure. Another thing I wouldn't mind seeing changed as we get the first couple of bans in for game number 2 was they put so much of a focus on where the farm was going. We saw Bastion had 80 plus CS, whereas and that was on Arden, whereas then the Batiste was sitting on like 20 CS. And the builds, if you're gonna do that, I feel like the Arden needs to provide a little bit more damage to a team fight, whereas otherwise give some more of that farm to Batiste, let him get a little bit more damage in these fights going down, because the defensive utility items, they don't cost as much. And you can get those a lot easier than you can the damaging.
Especially when on Batiste, you're wanting things like a Dragon Eye and a Shatterglass. These are the most expensive items in the game. Let's take a look at how the draft has been going so far. Bans, relatively standard. Fortress was mixed in there as well, which means Reza has been let through for first pick. And then a double captain pickup for Azura. Once again, Arden and Flicker.
I mean, we've seen a lot of these. Well, they didn't have the Arden last time, so it is a slight change. Arden was on the side of Exeed in game 1. So, but it is still the heavy captain focus that we saw. They had 3 captains last game. 3 of them were building as full captains, no offensive items. And that was the Adagio, the Flicker, and the Finn, with just 2 carries. And now they're kind of hiding those carries and saying, you know what? We're going to let you guess at what we're going to try and pick up to round this out. And so, looks like Exeed answers with, you know what? We'll just take all the carries then, as they grab themselves a Celeste to go along with the Reza. looking for maybe this Adagio, maybe going to switch it up. They're going to go for the Churn Walker,
I mean,
which had a lot of impact
Yeah,
last game.
the Churn Walker, I'm typically a fairly large critic of Churn Walkers. Often it feels like he doesn't have a huge impact. In that game, though, definitely was a very valuable pick. I think Churn Walker can be very hit and miss. Sometimes it can be an absolute carry of a captain. Sometimes it can just feel like a waste of a pick, but definitely was impressed in game number 1. I'm excited to see more of it. Samuel going to be locked in. He was one of our trending picks. Incredibly strong in the mid lane. You have to have something to follow up on his damage, though, because Samuel has that classic issue of being able to do a lot of damage, but not finishing off the kills.
Yeah, and he's also very much that last hero alive in a team fight because he has so much sustain. So you need someone to help him out to get those kills, so that when he is sustaining, when he is lasting long in these fights, when he's trying to clean up at the very end, it's just a little bit of health that the opponents have left for him to burn through. But they do grab the Arden as well, so this is still going to be that very heavy captain focus we already talked about with that first rotation, and now getting themselves the Lorelei to go with those two. Another one of those heroes that can be built offensively, but can also be built as a pure captain.
Yeah, so just a weapon power carry to be finished off with here. Gwen has been very popular at the minute. I think that's a fine lock-in to round out that composition. On the side of Exeed, though, we have a pretty aggressive composition, honestly, despite the fact there's a Celeste that, you got a Reza and a Skye. They love to bounce around.
I actually want to say that I love the fact that they took the Skye and put it on Kuros. We talked about his positioning. If there's any hero that can get you out of a bad positioning situation, it's Skye. So that's I feel like that might be one of those adjustments that's kind of made as, we need to be able to reposition in these fights if you do get caught out. So here's your opportunity to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, Webpower Skye has been incredibly strong recently. But let's take a look at our Poker Go format for the tournament. We have 5 weeks of play. We're already into week number 3. This is a single elimination best of 3 format, which means whoever loses this game is going to be out of the tournament, and whoever wins is going to be moving on to our semi-finals. The winner, obviously, of the entire tournament will be crowned the best in Europe or North America. But we can also take a look at what is on the line for these guys. We'll take a look at our Dollar Shave Club prize pool, as we have $5,000 available for each of these regions.
Yeah, $3,000 going to the first place team in each region. Obviously, that's enough to be a motivator, but there's also that pride on the line of being named the first VPL Open champion in 5v5 Vainglory.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being able to say that you were the first top team, but it's about time we get on into this round of 16 game. It's Team Azura versus Exeed. I'm going to pass it back to Scoundrel Flash X to take it away.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to what is essentially the European Rumble in the Jungle. It is another major level 1 fiesta between Exeed and Azure, and Kuros. Suri strikes his way to death right at the start here. I mean, this is just some insane level 1 action here, Flash.
Asura not wasting any time getting things started. Flicker so strong in these level 1 engagements. You can't really tell where he is. Obviously, the dude loves to go invisible. Skye getting caught out because of it. Exeed, though, able to secure their weapon power buff. I'm pretty surprised that Asura didn't try and press that advantage a little bit harder. You saw Jessus and Hunter RX go back for the crystal buff, and they're just going to rotate back. So a little bit slower of the start, not the 7 kills that we had last time, but still, we got a kill on the board, a little bit back and forth. Both teams just looking to secure their jungles early on.
Thank God my voice needs a rest, Flash, after that last game. I think it looked like Hunter and Jessus were concerned with their own CP buff, so they didn't commit to the full weapon power invade. And that ended up sort of ensuing what you saw there, which was just a 3-man half-hearted attempt at a steal from that weapon power buff, which was able to be secured. And actually, everybody gets their own jungles at the end of the day. After that sort of crazy level 1 start, everybody ends up getting their own jungles. Baby Groot and Kuros here putting pressure onto Noiso and Nomo. I'm just going to say it like that. And again, they managed to get that early lead versus him in the lane last time round, but didn't really convert it into anything meaningful. It looked like Baby Groot was actually doing some proxy farming, setting up the waves for Kuros, and just constantly pressuring this guy into turret.
Yeah, definitely some back and forth action. Samuel getting caught very low down in the mid lane. He goes down. Great pickup by Celeste to find that kill. Really great play by I Love Shy on the Turnwalker to pull him back into that last heliogenesis. That's the kind of Turnwalker mechanics I like to see. Evening up the kills, Tricky and Bruto going to look for a little bit of an early engage in this top jungle. We got to talk about the drafts, though. Definitely, I think a very even composition. A lot of this is going to come down to just execution by both teams. Tricky and Bruto positioning pretty heavily aggressively up in this top lane, making sure that Bastion isn't farming for free. But yeah, in these heroes, in these compositions, to have Samuel go down like that so early on is very surprising to me because he's the mid laner that, in my opinion, is the strongest. With the drifting darks and the sustain, it is so hard for enemy teams to try and deal with it.
Yeah, and also if you look at the composition from Azure, if you've got a Gwen and a Samuel, you're not going to be outscaling a Celeste in a weapon power Sky. So you have to get that advantage in the mid game. You have to try and convert. I mean, Samuel does okay in the late game, but compared to the Sky, the Gwen is going to start to fall off. An aggressive push here. Hunter actually having to boots out. Kuroz is pushing forward. Another big engage happening around this weapon power buff. They're stacked up on a heliogenesis here. They have to be so careful. Tricky on that front line, trying to do what he can. Has to pop the flask. Noiso and Nomo just in that front line on the Arden. A stray kill goes over to the Samuel here, and I think Azure will call that a win.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not really sure who took the gold tramp, but it doesn't really matter because they were able to pick up that kill. Hunter RX going so low. Able to punish the Reza for going in too deep. Baby Group gonna want to have that one back.
Kuroz, hello, Kuroz. He ends up going down. Does pick up the Lorelei though, I suppose, but you really didn't need to take a 1-for-1 trade at that point in time. Maybe he just wanted to get back to base quicker.
Yeah, as a carry, trying to trade yourself for what's arguably seen is kind of more of a utility style hero. I'm not sure that that's necessarily the trade that Kuroz wants to look for. No Soy Unomo being an absolute menace in the downside jungle. Baby Groot, though, on this res are going to be able to chase him down. I don't think he's getting out of that one, but he does manage. Yeah, that's going to be the difference maker right there. Arden just so tanky. Baby Groot being a little bit more passive after his overstep on the last play.
Yeah, Baby Groot trying to meet him here at this at this jungle shop. And Noiso and Nomo, he doesn't have much, but Baby Groot did not have that second dash to commit. He couldn't capitalize on his A if he tried to proc it, and that is going to be Noiso and Nomo. He doesn't back off, though. He's actually just going to sit under turret and try and farm a bit more. Actually forced to use the healing flask, and Kuroz tries to dive this one out. Not sure Kuroz wanted to commit too hard there, and Noiso and Nomo is just going to happily farm up this wave with that Stormguard banner and the double weapon blade that he's got in his inventory as well.
Yeah, that's actually can pack quite the punch. Literally going so... He almost trades it out. He needs to be careful, though. The forward barrage, if that was on target, may have taken him down.
Kuroz was trying to, I think, try and bait that one out, but we have another fight here. A kill goes over to Samuel, the Celeste, backing off very quickly with Baby Groot, and suddenly Azure, they have definitely got the better mid-game composition. So if they can capitalize from this point forward, if they get to 10 minutes and they have maybe half an item advantage on their carries, they can probably push this one very easily. They have to be careful, though. You look in the top lane, Grace has got Pulse Weave already. Bastion has literally had no one in his lane. He has just been chilling, farming for free, and has got a significant lead over his opposing number on Noiso and Nomo.
What a name! What a name to try and say. But yeah, there you go. Hey, that's a good way to shorten it. But yeah, Asura finding this Ghost Wing capture early on, even though Bastion on the Grace has been relatively uncontested. It might not be what Exeed wants this early on because they are starting to get quite a bit behind 3K. Flicker gonna pop the Moon Cloak, potentially looking for an engagement. This is where things that could just get blown wide open.
Oh, that's a massive engage by Bruto. Baby Groot goes down very quickly. That's another kill going over to Asura. And if there is a team that has made Flicker look good, it is definitely Azure. Bruto plays this all the time in solo queue as well. And for those of you that don't know, there's a lot of kind of notable players on these teams. Ponchik, or Ilahuk, as you might see him on your screen. He is a very notable European solo queue player, has had some experience at competitive level as well. He was known for his Celeste in 3v3, by the way, so putting him onto Celeste is very interesting. You can see Tricky, by the way, who had a massive break from competitive. You might have seen him at some of the Unified Western Live Finals last year, played with I'm the Doom, I believe. He's back, and he's on this team playing really well on this Gwen as well.
Asura taking full advantage of this Ghost Wing buff. Gonna have no problem taking down that top turret, immediately turning things on to Bastion. Gwen finding the ult. Not gonna be able to pick up the kill though.
She still had ultimate. It would have been a very tough ask for Tricky at this point with just the Serpent's Mask as Bastion jumps in. Bruto is there, however, Ponchik making his way over. Bruto might be forced to use that ultimate. Yes, he is. However, it's okay for Tricky to continue. On to Ponchik now, popping his own flask. Bruto trying to do what he can in that front line to be annoying. Body blocks the ultimate from the Celeste, and Tricky is still going, but I Love Shy there with the chains should be able to shore this one up for his team. Tricky, with the new Gwen B, has a massive burst of speed, but that is not enough to get him out of there. And Ponchik and I Love Shy specifically will pick up a double kill. How did the Arden pick up a kill?
That's a great question. I'm not really sure how he was able to that trade, but he'll be happy with it, sitting at 4, 1, and 3. Just so much happening in all parts of the map right now. Very hard for both of these teams to figure out how exactly they want to start executing this macro play. Asura still with the control, the tempo of the game, continuing to kind of just exert their early game dominance, while Exeed still looking to scale up, get some of these heroes to their later game power spikes. Celeste most notably hit that level 8. She's got the Spellfire online. Flicker gonna drop the Mooncloak though, potentially look for another engage.
Well, they've dropped it to the top lane to try and get that Grace, who did end up trading the turret. A turret for her life is really not the worst thing in the world. It really depends what Tricky and Bruto can make out of this. There is another grouping up around the Ghost Wing right now. Jessis has taken a lot of damage. A great stun from the Lorelei will stop I Love Shy, who doesn't manage to land that hook onto Jessis there. In comes Tricky, frontline Gwen, slam dunks Corroz. Huge amount of damage in the front line, and Bruto has now found the engage. A stun goes through the pickoff onto Churnwalker, who I think was caught by surprise from that Gwen damage. And another heavy aggressive engage coming out from Azure here. Bruto leading the charge. And I think this is enough to force Azure to back off, as I think Baby Groot wants some. Jessis will get the Lorelei shield though. Start to heal up from that Samuel ultimate. Another kill goes over to Bruto, who has been a monster on this Flicker. He has been absolutely insane this game. And Azure now in a position to potentially go for Ghost Wing.
Jessis, not necessarily a name that I'm personally too familiar with. He was so strong in the Celeste in that last game, looking so good with his positioning on Samuel here in this game. He's gonna go low, but still not taking down Asura, backing up his team. And of course, the barrier you get from Ghost Wing coming in right in the nick of time, being able to help keep his team alive. Asura Tricky going in hot.
Oh my word, this new Gwen B, by the way, is insane. He has just burnt it though, so that means he's not going to be in a situation to use it again, but Bruto, the savior on this Flicker, comes in and slows everybody down, and Tricky with that breaking point is starting to stack up. Pulled into a Heliogenesis range, but will get the speed buff from the Lorelei. I love this new Gwen B, by the way. It just makes her so aggressive. You can dive that backline really easily with one tap of the B and get that burst damage off, and that's what she's been doing in a lot of these fights.
Yeah, pairing that with her Boomstick perk allows her to just go in, figure out whatever backline carry she wants to try and go for, and just put in a huge burst of damage that they really need to be careful of, and especially because so many of these backline carries don't have too much defense. With Gwen having the breaking point, that's a tremendous amount of breaking point stacks that she gets to start off these fights, which is really good and definitely going to be pretty important to making sure that she can continue to apply damage as she kites back. One thing that I really like from Azura in this composition, though, that I'm pretty sure they took into account, because Exeed was able to pick up the Churnwalker, Azura was really smart in making sure they kept a lot of their damage in backline ranged carries, keeping them out of Churnwalker's hands, making it much harder for him to land hooks, and he's going to get engaged onto.
Oh, that was the ultimate there that will get him out. They're going to get on to the Lorelei. Oh, no, even the Flicker, but Flicker is just so tanky. That's a brilliant stun from Tricky, but he's in that front line by himself, trying to do what he can versus Corroz. I don't think he'll be able to trade. Oh, he trades! He trades, and he is sustaining with that Lorelei shield as well. Baby Groot going to go down. How is Tricky still alive? That Serpent's Mask with the breaking point stacks really coming into their own right now. I have no idea how he survived that, but he did, and Tricky even going to steal the weapon power buff. just to rub salt in the wounds.
Water wall. That was absolutely clutch coming out of Hunter RX to keep Tricky alive. Not only is he getting that barrier and that shield, making him, you know, super tanky, giving him more time to regen from his Serpent's Mask, but it's negating all of the CC that Exeed is trying to put onto the Gwen. Definitely critical for keeping him alive in the team fight. It's sort of looking like they want more, though.
Thank you. I've got a couple of things to talk about after the team fight, by the way, as that might be an overextend. The Arden goes down. Bruto also, but a nice Crucible will block a lot of that damage coming out from the Celeste. Bruto might give up his life here. Yes, he will. It really now depends what Exeed can do with that. Can they convert that to a Ghost Wing spawning in just a few moments? They also have the Black Claw to think about as well. A nice overextend, or a bad overextend rather, coming out from Azure, as that is going to be the Grace looking for the engage. Hunter doing what he can. The Took is going to land, and now Jessus versus the World. I don't know if he's got what it takes. He's going very low. He gets a kill onto Baby Groot, who's literally hard inting this game. He's now going to go for Ghost Wing. That was definitely a kill that he didn't need to go over. So a couple of things that I wanted to raise over to you as they go for Ghost Wing here. Baby Groot, 272, massively behind in his item spikes, only hit an Aftershock, went for the Stormguard banner, I think because he was jungling, but I'm not sure how much I like Stormguard banner on jungle Reza, simply because you usually duo most of the jungle these days. And the other thing, look at the Arden build. I didn't notice this until about 2 or 3 minutes ago. That is not top lane Arden that we know and love.
No, it's not. Most of the time, we do get that utility out of a top lane Arden. This game, though, no Soy Unomo feeling like, hey, I want to pack a punch, and packing a punch. He is indeed the Sorrow Blade Tyrant's Monocle combination. So much damage from his blood for bloods. And the biggest thing, too, is when this is a, you know, kind of untraditional off the meta build, it's something that's very hard for your team to really play against and understand. Azura finding the engage they want in the top side of the jungle, though.
That was a nice stun. It lands onto Baby Groot, who just manages to ult out of one of the Gwen ultos that will keep him alive, but unfortunately, he left his Celeste as a sacrificial lamb. The Grace ultimate is not going to do everything in this situation, and that is going to allow Tricky now, who's a frontline Gwen, a massive water wall coming out as well, and nobody can stop this Gwen with all those breaking point stacks. Baby Groot goes in, but he just does no damage. He's basically like a wet towel at this point in time, and Tricky, the frontline tank Gwen, all that damage. They block the ultimate from the Churnwalker. This should be clean up town now for Tricky, who is just chunking left, right, and center, and Team Azure looks so strong right now. They should be able to close this game out pretty soon.
Asura flexing here in game number 2. Game 1, a little bit more back and forth. They need to be careful. They're low, though. That's a sweet spot for Reza. He picks up 1. He's going to try and chase down Flicker for 2.
Don't know how much it's going to mean in the grand scheme of things, though, when you're this far behind. Flicker now stealthed. And Baby Groot is looking for his opportunity. Flicker has used that moon cloak. He's literally stood on top of him. He's going to jump back into that brush. That was sneaky from Bruto, and that's going to keep him alive.
Yeah, great heads up play by Bruto. Play patiently, use his ult to his biggest benefit, and make sure he gets out of that situation. I am loving what I'm seeing from Asura. I think Bacon might have to go back to his power rankings, put Asura in at that number 3 spot in place of Exeed, especially if the game ends up going their way, which it does. They managed to pick up an armory in that bot lane. They have the cams down in their base if they want to look for a cheeky little backdoor. No one with the teleport boots quite yet. Exeed on the back foot, over 10k gold behind. At this point, it's Asura's game to lose.
I've not seen much of Jessus 27 myself either. He might be a name chase. I'm not sure. I sort of not so used to him. But Tricky being back certainly still got it. He has been an insane player, especially on this Gwen this time round for Asura. But both the carries from this team look really good. Ultimate doesn't quite hit Kuroz there, who hasn't had the best of time on the Weapon Power Sky either. He's 2 and 8 at this point in time. And this is such a massive gold lead for Exeed to try and come back from. I'm not sure what they can do. I think this could be just too hard for them, as that's a massive amount of damage going to Ponchik. Unfortunately, One Punch Man Arden doesn't have the defenses to be able to sustain even just one supernova there. He gets insta-deleted, and then is now a member down for Team Asura.
All right, so this is kind of 2 games in a row that Asura has just thrown away their first Black Claw push. There was no reason for them to lose the Arden that early on. They are 100% losing this engagement. Tricky in super deep.
because Tricky's going deep right now, Flash. He is so strong. Breaking point stacks up left, right, and center. He's got that Serpent's Mask as well. It shows that all you need is a 50,000 breaking point stack Gwen and a Serpent's Mask and a Dream, and Asura are going to take the series 2-0.
I spoke too soon. They lost No Soyu Nomo super early on. I thought that they were blowing their chances. I guess they still could have executed much more cleaner, making sure that they were all together on that engagement. But yeah, Tricky, phenomenal game at 9-1-9, and just very close behind him at 8-1-11. Great stuff from Azura.
This might sound like a little bit out there, but I'm going to name Bruto my MVP. I genuinely think this flicker was insane this series. I genuinely think Bruto was insane this series in this flicker. It is the first time I've ever seen a flicker look good in any way, shape, or form. And Pulse Weave, like we said, is the item that's kind of made that happen. Right, that's the first series of the day wrapped up so quickly. Let's see what the desk have to